Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Jana Wilson, who's here to share with us her new book, Wise Little One, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child, a prescriptive memoir. Are you ready for deep and profound healing? Well, today Jana is going to share with us just that. So Jana Wilson is an emotional healing educator, meditation teacher, retreat leader, hypnotherapist, heart math facilitator, and founder of the Emotional Healing System. For the past 2 decades, she has taught thousands internationally in group and private retreats. Jana trained with best-selling author and physician Deepak Chopra and New York Times best-selling author Debbie Ford. So welcome to the show, Jana Wilson.
Thank you, Marianne. Lovely to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I found your book to be so impactful. Why did you decide now was the time to write this?
Well, timing's everything. And my mother passed away last year. And, there was a lot of a very complicated relationship there. So it was just the perfect time. I'd been writing this book on and off for 25 years. And it was just a culmination of, the time's right. Let's get it out in the world. I think inner child work is really trending now. I think people are starting to open up and understand more thanks to social media and such. So, yeah, I think it was the perfect time.
So when we talk about inner child work, for those that might be new to that, what does that mean?
Your inner child is your feeling self. So it's the felt sense in the body of feelings. When we're little, from birth to 7, it's fair to say that we view the world through the lens of our feelings. Our intellect, our brain's not developed until we're 25. And so we don't have the rational structures of an adult. And so therefore, the inner child is both positive, happy feelings, and it's also how we were conditioned and the suffering that we create for ourselves. So it's both. So every feeling that we experience, the way that I've learned and the way that I teach in my emotional healing system is by relating with the feeling as a child.
So I know often it's said that you can't take people where you haven't been. And so when we look at healing our inner child, it really does a lot with healing trauma, right?
It does, yes. So you have to be able to meet yourself and go into, some of the darkest places of wounds and adverse childhood experiences. There's a test called the ACE that clinicians give clients, and I scored 10 out of 10. So I experienced a lot of trauma as a child and was diagnosed, of course, with PTSD, which is complex trauma. So I was experiencing it compounded on a daily basis. So it, probably around 20 is when I would say I really began to focus on I need help. I don't want to repeat the patterns of my parents.
That's so wise. I think a lot of times people look at how they were raised and not really looking at all the chaos that's been there or justifying it, or maybe just not knowing that things can be different. So to look at that and then say, gosh, I don't want to do what my parents did, that takes a lot of insight.
Well, when I was 12, as you know, in the book, I start the prologue with the moment that really, I think, set me on this trajectory to become an emotional healing educator and do the work that I do today. For 19 years, I've been supporting clients to reunite and reconcile with their own inner child through reparenting. Because if we don't have a resource, like my grandmother was my resource, she provided stability for me as a child. But my inner resource developed very young, and that was a connection to nature. I talk a lot about it. Even the cover of the book is a little girl running through nature. But it was a connection to spirit. And I grew up in the Bible Belt and it was very religious. But the gift of the trauma is that I was very devoted to connecting to spirit. And at 12 years old, I had an out of body experience. People have called it astral travel, near death experience. Essentially, what happened under the gun of an intense traumatic experience between my parents. I was pulled out of my body. I was able to see my little human self there and hear the fighting. But I heard a voice, an internal voice that said, "Those are not your parents, and that is not your life. This is, and I am." And that woke me up. And of course, I was only 12. And so by the time I was 20, a few years later, I remembered that experience. I mean, it never left me. So I think it created, Marianne, a really deep desire to understand what happened to me and how I shifted and began to view my life and my circumstances, not from a victim, but from somebody who maybe had some gift to give the world.
What a profound experience and spiritual awakening that was. And was it at that point that you really started to learn how to connect with your spiritual guidance?
I feel like I'd already been doing that. When you're in nature, nature has effortless ease. So for me, it's where I found solace and connection, being in the trees, the birds, squirrels. I mean, I lived in a rural area in Central Florida. And so, it was, I guess, pretty, I took it for granted maybe because I, grew up in the church and I was having these experiences. We went to what you call a holy roller or Pentecostal church for a while where they spoke in tongues and I one time was slain in the spirit. So I was praising and worshiping, and the next thing you know, I passed out. And when I came to, I just felt so much lightness of being. And as a child, having those experiences, of course, when I was 12 and I got pulled out of my body, I began to question traditional, the beliefs of the church that I was going to, and they essentially kicked me out. But I always say that I wouldn't change the trauma, the parents, the life that I had for anything if it meant that I wouldn't have this deep connection to spirit. Because ultimately, I believe, as what Teilhard de Chardin, the French Jesuit priest, said, we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
I agree with that completely. It's really easy to forget that we're spiritual beings with all the trauma and negativity that surrounds us. Do you feel like most people are walking around with some type of trauma?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and trauma, the way I like to define trauma is, there's always experiences that are happening that could traumatize a child. For example, like there's certain archetypes of trauma, parental trauma, like a parent who doesn't see or hear a child. We hear these sayings like children are to be seen and not heard, but that's a trauma for a child when they aren't seen and heard. We know someone loves us when we're seen and heard, but trauma creates a warped psyche, and that's in survival mode. And, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is really an adaptation to what happened to us. And then we see it more and it takes away the shame. There's no disorder because disorder says something's wrong with me, right? But as children, it's not a disorder. It's just something happened and I'm adapting to the circumstances of what happened. And as we get older, it's very important to go back, and root cause therapy is really important. A lot of what we see now is top-down therapy. You go to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. We talk a lot about our emotions and our feelings, but there's really no process. We're not taught how to manage them and regulate our emotions. We're given a pill, right? It's a quick fix. And so this type of work that I've been engaged in myself and deliver to the world is root cause therapy. Let's go back to family of origin and see, is there intergenerational trauma? Did you, take on trauma from your parents because of the way they adapted to things that happened to them as children? And the way that I do it is I'm a hypnotherapist, so I do it through hypnotherapy sessions.
That must be a very powerful experience for somebody being able to get to that place.
It is. There's one client that always comes to mind, Marianne. She was 42. She described, she was coming to me because she felt very like she should be happy. Why am I not happy? I have a loving husband. I have 2 children. But there was an overarching theme that she kept saying I could hear. Because in my work, I have to listen to what a client is saying, what they're not saying, what they need to say. So there's so many levels of listening. And she kept complaining that no, her feelings didn't matter. Essentially, this was the overarching complaint. And when we did the hypnotherapy session, she went back to 5 years old. Her parents were still married. She described a really loving childhood. She couldn't remember any traumas. And she was on vacation. They went to a lake. She was afraid to get into the lake because she couldn't see the bottom. She was used to a swimming pool and she had never been in a lake and the water was murky and she was afraid. And so she was telling her parents no, she didn't want to go in. Well, rather than respecting her wishes, and eventually she probably would have got in, she would have seen everybody was safe and playing, and they forced her in. In the moment that they forced her in, I said to her in the hypnotherapy, recognize that little 5-year-old made a decision about herself in the world. What was that? And she immediately said that my feelings don't matter, right? Because if her feelings mattered, her parents would have honored them. And then she began to see how that had played out in her life. And of course, she made it mean that if her feelings don't matter, then other people, her husband, her parents, other people knew better than her. So she wouldn't listen to her own intuition, which kept her attracting situations and circumstances and relationships, right? That kept her mired in this cyclical pattern of my feelings don't matter. And then, of course, she would get passive aggressive and angry and feel like no one cared about her, when really she wasn't advocating for herself. She wasn't speaking up.
That's just so impressive how that all comes together. Do you run into a lot of people who get to this place where they really don't have any memory of their childhood, but they know that they were in a toxic situation and there was trauma involved?
Well, if safety is essential for healing. So if we don't feel safe, especially with a therapist, that's when we disassociate. And when someone says to me, I can't remember childhood memory, in my hypnotherapy training, the clinicians, we were trained to say, ask the client, what did you have for breakfast? And they'll start describing what they had for breakfast. Or, we'll start to guide them in current situations. What happens is they have never got into a relaxed state, because all hypnosis is deep relaxation. If you can get someone into a deep, relaxed state, we can bypass the conscious mind and access the subconscious. And so it's about 75% of people can be hypnotized. 25% fight it. So it's not that they can't access the memory, they're too afraid. And so if you create safety, a safe container, and they trust you, then usually they're surprised that they can remember things.
I just think we're living in such a great time that we're able to have these discussions. Because I know in the 70s and 80s, 90s, people didn't talk about mental health and how to heal this portion of our lives. So I think we have a huge population that is really longing for this type of information.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And, it's why I feel like I'm on a mission. For 19 years, I've been doing this work, but it's certainly accelerating now. And with now that I've published the book and share with so much vulnerability, as you know, my own traumas and my own stories, some of the reviews are, I felt like I was with little Jana, walking with her. And even though I didn't experience maybe trauma like you did, it was universal, right? Because there's these undigested life experiences that happen. and it triggers for people as they're reading the book. And so it supports their own healing.
In your book, you have all these words of wisdom, and one really stuck with me. You talk about how, depress really means press down or lower. And then you go further into description about how that can be a disassociation from, our emotions as a child. And I felt so impressed by that.
Yeah, a lot of people come to me, they'll describe they've been depressed. And, we in Western medicine, there's a lot of great things about Western medicine. My husband's a physician, and, I have a lot of respect for it. But there's also, just like everything, we need to take a deeper look at Western medicine. And depression, my mother was clinically depressed, and the word, if you look it up, it means to press down. And so if our feeling self is that inner child, what we're doing, if we say we're depressed, we've just been not listening, right? We've just been, it's like a little child sitting right next to you. Marianne is little Marianne, and she's tugging on your shoulder and saying, hey, I'm not feeling good, or, something's going on. And you're like, shush, let's watch TV or go get something to eat. And we do that over and over, and it compounds until one day we're like, I'm depressed.
Yes, exactly. And then we're trying to figure out why. And I don't know, is it like a combination of life experiences?
Yeah, because it accumulates, right? So it's like, I'll say I'm interviewing someone as a client, and they're telling me, they just broke up with someone, and they're just, the pain is excruciating. Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about previous relationships. I know more than likely the disproportionate pain that you're feeling over this 6-month relationship is compounded pain because you've been abandoning your inner child, your feelings, in all these relationships for so long. As soon as an adult says, I have abandonment issues, immediately I know they're abandoning their feelings, their inner child, because adults can't be abandoned. If you're handicapped, you could be abandoned. If you're mentally ill, you could be abandoned. If you can't take care of yourself, you could be abandoned. If you're elderly, children can be abandoned. But if you're an adult, you cannot be abandoned. So when you're in relationship with others, like say they're emotionally distant and disconnected and unavailable, and you feel abandoned by them, or they've ghosted you or something like that, it's because all the while there were red flags and you weren't listening. You weren't valuing and loving and listening to your emotions, telling you, I don't feel like I can trust this person. Like, why are you giving me away to them? So, and that's adaptations to childhood. We become caretakers, right? We get in these codependent relationships where we make other people's feelings more important than ours because we're taught in society too, this conditioned idea to be a good person and someone else is suffering, we must give up ourselves to help them when we're really helpless over others, right? And irresponsible over them. If we have no intent to hurt someone and someone is hurt, Marianne, then, it's not our responsibility. But because we're, again, not taught emotional intelligence skills in school and family units, I mean, parenting doesn't come with Parenting 101, right? Doesn't come with a manual. I wish it did.
I wish it did too. It's interesting. I think a lot of us look back and, and generations have changed. There's definitely discussion in regards to emotional intelligence now, but looking back, it almost, I think some of us could say we were raised by wolves,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I just, I set out to be the cycle breaker. In my 20s, I got pregnant fairly young at 22, had my daughter, and I knew I did not want to bring her up into a life like I experienced. And was I perfect at it? Absolutely not. I made lots of mistakes, and I probably was hyper vigilant and overcorrected. I swung the pendulum too far, became kind of a helicopter mom. But through steadfast conviction of continue looking at myself and meeting myself and understanding that I could correct those intergenerational patterns. I've raised a very functioning young woman, 35 years old. I have a grandson who's 7. She's married to a very emotionally intelligent man. And, again, nothing's perfect and we don't arrive somewhere. We all still have work to do. I believe as long as we're breathing on this earth, there's always something to learn. But it's possible to heal all that intergenerational chaos that we, take on from our families.
Where do you think people get stuck during this process?
Probably they get in their head. So there's 4 ways we abandon. I spoke about abandoning. There's another term called orphaning our emotions, our inner child. When we do this, most people get in their head, and we're really adept at that, especially if you're smart. And we want to analyze it until we're paralyzed and talk therapy, and just our feelings are felt in our body. So we can't meet our emotional self through the mind. So that's one area people get stuck. The second way that we abandon ourselves is we push ourselves harshly. And this is my number one abandonment mechanism. Is I'm very judgmental of myself because I grew up feeling like white trash, being labeled that, being poor. I had something to prove to the world. And even writing this book, Marianne, it's been so cathartic because it's another level of healing for me because, as you know, I didn't finish college. I just writing a book and being an accomplished author and putting my story out into the world is a huge accomplishment for me. But it also can come with a price that I'm always pushing. What's my next level? Oh, I've got to prove something to someone. I don't know who it is. I'm becoming more and more chill about it now and more relaxed. And of course, I use the tools I teach, but that's another way we abandon ourselves, is we push harshly. Third way, of course, is addictions. And those can even be quote unquote positive, like exercise or even meditation. We spiritual bypass our emotion, our inner child, through a myriad of addictions. And then the fourth way is through blaming others. And of course, that's the classic victim. So these are the places we get stuck. Woe is me. And, the past happened. And until we can accept that it has happened, not that it was right. It's certainly not right for an 8-year-old child to have a shotgun put to her head by her mother. Certainly not right for a child to witness her father, brutally beating her mother and brother. The things that I experienced, it's not right for children to be molested and raped. These are egregious. They're wrong. There's nothing right about it, but they happen. And until we can come to the place of reconciliation, that the past is the prison, we need to learn lessons from it so that we can empower ourselves and not perpetuate that to our own children, or, really just get so stuck that we stop living and we become, just checked out from life.
So, how do people move beyond that type of extreme trauma?
Well, the first part of the healing journey, we know when people cry that they're on the path to healing. And a lot of times it's really hard to access the heart. I think, one of my gifts of my childhood, like I said, is that connection to spirit. So my husband and I practice psychospirituality. It's a combination of psychology and spirituality, because we know now that you can't just meet your trauma from the lens of psychology and the mind. And you can't just meet your trauma from, seeing a clinic, minister or spiritual teacher, or it takes both. And so when you can find somebody who's practicing both, that can honor your beliefs, whatever those spiritual beliefs are, that we all are here for a purpose, that there's some greater force that we can connect to. I mean, I certainly couldn't work with somebody who is an atheist, say, that is, completely disconnected and a non-believer in anything. It takes creativity. A lot of these assisted medicinal therapies that help people because it paralyzes the amygdala and it opens up the receptor sites in the brain for you to go to places you're afraid to go. The traumas that were so big. I just worked with a client. He went to a place in childhood where he's never looked at it before, that he was molested. And it was a huge breakthrough. So we're living in times, as you said before, that there's a lot of opportunities to do very non-conventional methods of healing. Johns Hopkins offers psilocybin, mushroom assisted therapy. So we're starting to see that. Michael Pollan, the author and researcher who wrote the book Change the Mind, How to Change the Mind, and did a docuseries on Netflix. I encourage any listeners to watch that. It goes into 4 episodes of different type of assisted medicinal therapies to help you heal.
I know that you really are into taking full responsibility for our soul's journey. What are some ways that our listeners can really walk in that path and develop that kind of unshakable faith that you have?
That's a beautiful question. I think a sincere heart, a clear intention, that to understand and see your pain through the lens of lessons. I believe we're here in Earth School. I call it Earth School, and our Creator gave us free will, and so we can choose to use that free will and suffer and again be a victim and woe is me, or we can choose to shift our perception and view it through the lens of maybe it happened for me. And if it happened for me, gosh, I must be a pretty strong soul to have chose these experiences, these life lessons. And maybe there's some greater gift and purpose that I want to taste and experience in life as a result of that deep wound. I always tell clients, think about a skyscraper. A skyscraper, in order for it to go really high in the sky, they have to go really deep into the earth. And our pain is similar. We have to be willing to patiently dwell in darkness and pain and to reach the ecstasy, to reach the height of the opposite. William James, the philosopher, said there's 2 types of people in the world, once born and twice born. And once borns, they're afraid to stray from the familiar. And when you're doing this type of work to truly heal, you got to let go of the known, the familiar. The word familiar even comes from family, familial. And so we've got to let go of that and step into the unknown. And so to be a twice born, you've got to stray from the familiar path, take the road less traveled. And it's scary for many people, but if you find a trusty guide like myself or someone who can take you on that journey, then it'll be the greatest gift that you ever give to yourself.
I understand you created the emotional healing system. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So early in my mid-30s, I was looking for something to go to help me deal with a lot of the anger that I felt from my childhood. I was living in kind of that victim mentality. And when I went to doctors, they put me on Lexapro, anti-anxiety, Xanax. I knew better, than I did not want to take a pill. I wanted to do deeper work. And so I began finding the teachers, right? Deepak Chopra was my first teacher. He's an MD, endocrinologist, for any listeners who haven't ever heard of him. I trained with him and worked at the Chopra Center teaching meditation. And so then I found Debbie Ford. She was a New York Times bestselling author. She's passed away, but she wrote Dark Side of the Light Chasers and Secret of the Shadow. So she was teaching Jungian shadow work. And all of this started to, I felt like, put together pieces of a puzzle that were helping me heal. And then I began to think, okay, how could I bring together all these essential pieces that maybe one teacher was teaching, but they weren't teaching the whole, total It wasn't a complete, picture of a holistic healing. And so in 2004, I launched my retreat business. By 2010, I took a step back, and that's what that year I created the emotional healing system. I had some beautiful marketing people and, guides to help me brand this idea. And I put together a system. My husband and I are actually writing my second book right now. He's co-authoring with me on the emotional healing system and all the components of it. And, I feel like it's a really powerful system. It's simple to use and learn. And it contains, there's nothing I created. It comes from teachings that are some 5,000 years old. But I put it all together, and it's synthesized holistic healing from A to Z. And if somebody were to follow these on a daily practice, they would absolutely see results in their life.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we could talk for hours. Where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about Wise Little Ones, and be part of your community?
Well, Emotional Healing Retreats is the name of my retreat business. And we lead 4 retreats a year. We do 2 weekends and 2 5-day deep immersions. And you can find all the info there. We also have a healing center in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that's also at emotionalhealingretreats.com. And you can go to emotionalhealingsystem.com as well. JanaWilson.com is my author website, and you can read about the book and read the reviews, and of course purchase the book anywhere books are sold, Amazon being the biggest seller. And the retreats are, we have private one-on-one VIP retreats here at our healing center in Santa Fe. So the people come in and work with myself and my husband and a couple of other healers that we bring in from Santa Fe. And it's a very powerful, intensive. I do those usually about once a month, Marianne, and I'm usually booked 4 to 6 it depends, about 6 months out usually.
Well, I'm not surprised. Your work is so impactful. Well, Jana, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Jana. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Wise Little One, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child. On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Jana Wilson, author of Wise Little One, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child, a best-selling prescriptive memoir in inner child healing. I'm also the founder of the Emotional Healing System. The inner child, simply put, is your feelings, both positive and negative. If you'd like to learn to love and listen to your wise little one, pick up my book at Amazon or visit my website at janawilson.com. It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. They used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. we're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
Looking for a page-turner? Cozy up to a fantasy adventure romance trilogy with The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper by Mary Kay Savarese. The second novel in the Star Writers trilogy, The Star Writers Club, is coming soon. Take the journey. Connect with Mary at www.maryksavarese.com. Her books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores.
With Breath Hub, you'll experience the transformative power of breath as it harmonizes your body, mind, and spirit. Recommended by experts in fitness, sports, psychology, and medicine. Meet the scientific way of being well. Breath Hub. Breathe better, live better.
Pandemonium. Fast forward 20 years. A U.S. president seizes control of all U.S. missiles, the power grid, the banking system, and every computer in America as he hides in an underground bunker. Pandemonium, a captivating sci-fi thriller where a hidden war, psychics, aliens, artificial intelligence, and transcendental love collide with the latest media technology. Pandemonium, live to all devices. Get your copy on paperback or digital. Free sample at getpsychic.org.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.